All right, good morning. July 18th, 2023. Huh. I don't know if how many of you live in the Bay Area, but I am going to teach live on Thursday night at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. And anybody who's nearby, I would love if you came by, because there's not many people that, can that show up for live events anymore. And I kind of insisted to them that I wanted to teach live if I could. So it's James Barris's regular class, and he's out of town. And for you East Coast people, I'm heading out there on August 10th and teaching. Vicky is putting on a show for me in Ithaca. Hello, Vicky. Anybody who's in upstate New York should come. Sort of off the beaten path. So if you're interested in my teaching, most of the events are on my website. Actually, I don't think I have that on my website because I don't have. Yeah. Well, you have to send me the information, like where it's going to be. Like that would be helpful. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So we are going to meditate for about 20 minutes and then I'll talk a little bit. People are still arriving. I'm wondering if there are some new people here. Do I see some faces I'm not familiar with? If you'd like to say hi and where you're from, if you haven't been with us before, it'd be great to see in the chat. Or even, if you have been here before.
Hi, my name's Damien. I'm from Hastings in England.
Oh, lovely. Hey, Damien, welcome.
Hey, I'm Reese, and I'm from Wales in the UK. I've been here.
All right, we're getting people from across the pond. Yes, lovely. Welcome. So it's evening for you guys. Yes, very good. Sarah from Western North Carolina, great. I will be there at Southern Dharma Labor Day week. Yeah. Lee, you're raising your hand.
I am. So I'm Lee. I live in Salina, Kansas. And I happened onto your book when we were visiting family in San Diego, at Buddha for You. So I tuned in once several weeks ago, and I'll tune in every day, every Tuesday that I can.
Great. Welcome.
Thanks for doing this.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, it saves me. It's been a bit of a strange July so far. We here in Northern California are one of the few places in North America that's having comfortable weather. Although I did check the temperature in Glasgow and Galway today, two places I was last summer. So they're in the high 60s. That's, Fahrenheit. So it's not so bad. I don't know how it is in further south in Britain, but not as bad as some of the places we're seeing. And it's heartbreaking, it is heartbreaking to see what's happening to our planet. But we carry on, and with hope, a certain amount of hope that humanity can solve the problems that it's created. Anyway, you didn't come here for that. Let's relax. Be present for whatever is happening right now. So I'll give some guidance for meditation, and then I'll give you some quiet time. So just get you started. first few minutes. So this will be about 20 minutes for those who are, want to know how long we're sitting. All right, so settling into the body, settling into a posture that's supportive of mindfulness and wakefulness. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. And beginning by simply feeling how you're holding your body, both in terms of the posture, in terms of any tension or stress you might be holding. And with the breath, releasing the sense of softening, settling. The simple idea of working with the breath can be used as the in-breath being opening, just allowing in whatever is present, not kind of having any tension or resistance. So it's opening and then releasing, that exhalation. This is a simple way to settle the body and mind. Open, release. We're not trying to control the mind or body. Rather, first be aware of what's present in mind and body, and take an attitude of acceptance, kindness, receptivity, and even curiosity. What is happening? What am I feeling? What's capturing my attention? Can I let it go and just connect with the sensations of breath? Opening, releasing. We are, in a sense, just trying to simplify when we meditate. not get involved in all the complications of mind that ordinarily occupy us. Breath by breath, we step away, step back into the simplicity of just a body, just a mind, just feelings, observing, not trying to figure anything out, not judging. It's in a sense, a shift in orientation to observing experience. Instead of being caught up in reactivity, we work with the simplest elements of experience, the sense experience, of which the breath is one, just the touch of breath. The raw felt experience, feelings, the energies that pass through the mental experience, the words and images that appear in the mind. But all of this is viewed from this stance, this uninvolved stance, just observing, not controlling. All right. Well, a sutta, actually, I was going to look at this morning, which I think has got some good imagery for addiction and recovery. Kind of tempted to talk a little bit about meditation. I feel like so often people get sort of the wrong idea about what meditation does or what its potential is, and we can have these sort of inflated ideas, or kind of compare our own experience to some model we have of what we think is supposed to happen, and I think it's helpful to keep our practice simple as much as we can, and kind of keep our goals as well simple. I do. I mean, I know like that this practice can be quite transformative, but the idea that that's going to happen in some sort of flash of light is not really helpful. It's more helpful to think of it as a gradual training, as it's often described, and not to get ahead of ourselves, to just sort of recognize where we are. And so one simple way to think of the practice is that it's developing two qualities: the quality of calm, concentration, and the quality of insight or clarity or wisdom. And even that, even saying, oh, insight, like, oh, what am I going to figure out? A lot of insight really comes kind of in the back door. You don't even realize what you're realizing. This came home to me when I started to fairly early in practice, when I'd done a bunch of retreats and things, and sort of was like, well, where's my insights? And then I would read Dharma, and I would understand what they were saying. And then I started to, things would click into place. And I started to realize that I was learning things sort of non-conceptually, that only when someone explained the concepts to me, that I realized, oh, I understood that. And I think this is what, in sort of simple terms, the Buddha refers to as vision and knowledge. I was talking about this recently. So the moment of enlightenment supposedly has this sort of these two elements, vision and knowledge, and it's sort of what I'm describing, which is like there's an experience, but it's not understood yet, this vision, and then the knowledge is like putting it together, realizing, oh, this is what I just experienced. And a lot of times I think you can have vision in meditation that you don't understand and don't even know that you've had, because you might be looking for something else or expecting something else. So just working with, for instance, difficult emotions and breathing with them, you can start to have these experiences that you don't really think about, but you start to work with these things, and then you start to be able to manage these kind of emotional energies that come through, and you don't necessarily even realize you're doing it because you're just sitting there breathing and you're feeling something, and then you're giving it space, and you're letting it go. But then at some point, you hear a talk, you read a book, and you're like, oh, I'm letting go, or something like, oh, I'm not getting caught in that thing that ordinarily would catch me. And you start to see, oh yeah, this is actually working. Something's happening. So, this is an argument for just continuing to practice and not sort of waiting for something or particularly worrying about the frustrations of practice. It's so easy to get into the sort of frustration and annoyance or self-judgment or about what's going on in your meditation. And it's kind of like a self-healing process, I think, that you just have to stay engaged with. And in this way, bringing it back to recovery, it's similar to just showing up. You don't necessarily see your spiritual growth or your recovery growth day by day when you're sober or clean. But over time, there's these huge shifts that happen. And then it's really only later on that you're able to look back and go, oh, wow, like 2 years ago, I was completely out of control or whatever. And I'm learning how to navigate my life in a way I didn't know how to do before. And I'm not quite sure when that happened or how that happened, but it's happening, right? And meditation is similar, I think, in that regard. So I think this really points to the faith element of our practice and of recovery, that we really have to trust in the process. And I find that, I have faith in both those things, in recovery and in Dharma practice, but where, I've been doing this a long enough time that it's sort of, that's not that much of a question. But where the risk is for me is, not trusting my own kind of mental health, if you will. And so I'm noticing that, like, lately, I've just generally been in a bad mood, like, but it just hasn't spiraled, which is like, that's for me the progress. It's not, oh, I get to be in a good mood all the time. It's like, it used to be when I would get in a bad mood, it would spiral and it would turn into even in sobriety, like it would turn into real difficult depression. Right now, just like, it's kind of like a mild cold versus, the flu. Yeah. I also, this has a sort of a physical correlation that I tweaked my knee last week. I think I just over exerted and then was getting out of bed on Saturday, and it kind of like twisted and of course, like, my mind immediately goes to, okay, surgery, you have to cancel your trip to the East Coast. And, and I'm watching all that, like, oh, that's interesting. And I called the doctor and they're like, don't have any time to see me. And I'm like, but, my knee just is healing itself, right? Like, it's just getting better every day. And I'm not doing anything particularly, I'm resting. One thing, like, I always really encourage when there's an injury, rest rather than like, oh, I have to run out and do things to make it better. But it is very similar to me, to the mind, the body and mind. When we rest them, take care of them, don't panic, that they tend to heal. There's this self-healing that our bodies and minds have these capacities. So I'm going to talk about a sutta. I was looking for something to talk about this morning, and I had recently discovered this sutta. So if you're not familiar, suttas are like the early teachings of the Buddha. And we don't know that they're exact. Well, we assume they're not word for word what the Buddha said, but they generally seem to carry a lot of what was offered by him. And this is one of those suttas. It's got some details that are make it seem more like a true narrative. There's this character who comes to the Buddha, and I love the way he's described. It said, Putalia, the householder, while walking and wandering for exercise, wearing full dress with parasol and sandals, went to the grove where the Buddha was. So, this is like they're trying to, create an image of this gentleman who's kind of dressed up, I guess, and carrying an umbrella, a parasol, presumably for the heat of the sun. And he gets annoyed with the Buddha because the Buddha calls him a householder, and he thinks he's not a householder. That's not really what the main piece is here, that I think is relevant for us. The Buddha has, I think, 5 similes in here that are about craving. And how does he put it? Sensual pleasures. So I talked about these recently somewhere else, but anyway, I think they're worth reviewing. So the Buddha is, as he often is, trying to show that satisfying sensual pleasures, first of all, that sensual desire can't ultimately be satisfied, and that pursuing satisfaction through sensual pleasures is a failed strategy, and that it will only bring suffering, which is, of course, a summation of the first or of the second noble truth, basically. The 4 noble truths being about about suffering, how it arises, how it ends, and how to end it. So here are the images. He says, suppose a dog overcome by hunger and weakness was waiting by a butcher's shop. Then the skilled butcher or his apprentice would toss the dog a well-hacked, clean-hacked skeleton of meatless bones smeared with blood. What do you think, householder? Would that dog get rid of his hunger and weakness by gnawing such a well-hacked, clean-hacked skeleton of meatless bones smeared with blood? No, venerable sir. Because, and the Buddha says, so, householder, a noble disciple considers thus: sensual pleasures have been compared to a skeleton by the Blessed One. They provide much suffering and much despair, where the danger in them is great. So, it's I think a classic image for us of the unsatisfactory nature of craving and of addiction. It's like, this drink is gonna do it for me, and where does it lead? It leads to more suffering. Suppose a vulture, a heron, or a hawk seized a piece of meat and flew away. And then vultures, herons, and hawks pursued it and pecked it and clawed it. What do you think, householder? If that vulture, heron, or hawk does not quickly let go of the piece of meat, wouldn't it incur death or deadly suffering? So just interesting image, sort of horrible image of like one of the birds has some meat and all the rest of them come and attack him trying to get his meat, right? So here, this is a little bit more like about jealousy. So again, the Buddha says, sensual pleasures have been compared to a piece of meat by the Blessed One. They provide much suffering and much despair, while the danger in them is great. Householder, suppose a man took a blazing torch and went against the wind. If that man does not quickly let go of that blazing torch, wouldn't that blazing torch burn his hand or his arm so that he might incur death? Yes, Venerable Sir. So too, a noble disciple considers thus, sensual pleasures have been compared to a grass torch. So, and this is an interesting one too, you're holding on to this thing, but you're foolishly, it's like, even though it's burning you, you don't want to let go, right? Again, just like, so much like addiction. And this one I really love. Suppose a man dreamt about lovely parks, lovely groves, lovely meadows, and lovely lakes, and on waking saw nothing of it. So too a noble disciple considers sensual pleasures have been compared to a dream. How many times do we, it's kind of like like sitting at the bar and talking about all the great stuff you're going to do with your life, or, or tripping and like, oh man, like it's so great. And then you wake up the next day, you're like, oh God, I feel horrible. So yeah, I mean, it's remarkable to me how the Buddha kind of captures these human experiences, and with these images. It's it's not theoretical. It's like, oh yeah, right, yeah, I've been there. Like, the meatless bone. Just how many times have we chased after something that just doesn't have any meat on it, that doesn't have any nutrition on it. It's not going to satisfy us. Painful, and I mean, this is again, always what the Buddha is pointing to, like, look at your experience, look honestly at it. Because we're, as addicts, addiction is a state of delusion. I mean, we call it, we have the term denial, but it's more than that. It's this complete, like, deluded way of viewing experience. And, this is, it's so interesting that the Buddhist core teaching really speaks directly to this, to addiction. It's not like, one of the reasons I love the Dharma in connection with recovery is there's no translation that has to happen. You don't have to say, oh, and see how this fits with addiction. I mean, I do that, but it's pretty obvious, that the human condition the Buddha is describing is the condition of the addict. And it's just that addicts are more, further down that hole. We're more captured by that. We are like that dog chewing on that bone that's got no meat in it, and it's not for us. It's not theoretical. It's not like, oh yeah, like, sometimes I think about going to Hawaii and there's grasping in my mind. No, it's like we've lived through, being the victims of our own craving and seeing the deep, deep suffering and pain that comes from following grasping, from trying to get meat off of bare bone, from believing in the dreams that we have from grasping onto a piece of meat and from carrying a blazing torch, walking into the wind with a blazing torch and being burned by it, not being willing to let go. This is, of course, this is just so much our condition. And it, it's hard to let go. I mean, the dreams or the hope that there's going to be some meat on that bone, or that deep conditioning that is really human and instinctive, that my desires are going to be satisfied if I can just find the right way to satisfy them. That's essentially the illusion that the Buddha is talking about here, and that we all live under. I mean, that the human race, when I say we all, I mean the human race lives under this illusion. And it's the cause of suffering in the world. It's the cause of war. It's the cause of greed. It's the cause of poverty. All of it driven by a misunderstanding, a belief that I can get something that will bring me ultimate satisfaction. And I might have to take it from someone else, or, I might have to struggle for years and be miserable, but I'll get there. I may have to commit crimes, or be harm others, or be commit immoral acts, but I will get there. It's gonna come, and so we spin and spin and spin, and I don't know about reincarnation, but in that context, it makes sense. Like that, this illusion keeps feeding on itself, and every time we get a little bit of meat off that bone, we think, okay, now I'm getting there, and the next bone will be the one. Very hard to let go of that. I mean, I don't even like to put up the model that you should or will get to this point where there's no grasping. I mean, supposedly there is, according to these teachings, there is this potential to completely let go, but in the meantime, what we do is we keep self-correcting. Basically, we keep noticing. A lot of our work in terms of letting go is done retrospectively. We realize, I've been caught in that. I need to let it go. Or even, what's going on right now is that I'm caught and I can't let go. But that's okay. I don't have to make more out of it. Because when we get this certain amount of wisdom, we can use it to beat ourselves up, right? You can use our wisdom as the so-called second arrow. And this is like one of the mistakes of spiritual practice. I'm not supposed to get angry, and I got angry. I'm such a failure. What's wrong with me? And then not only did I get angry, but then I have this additional shame and guilt about it. Rather than, anger arising, well, that's human, and let me let go and come back. Let me make amends. Let me, make me self-correct with that. And that's what I think most of our practice is. It's the same thing with our meditation. When you're meditating, it's, most of what we're doing is going, my mind wandered. Let me come back. Okay, now I'm back. This is okay. Breathe. Okay, breathe. Wait, I'm gone again. Let me come back. Let me come back. But if we turn it into, oh, my mind wandered. Why am I so bad at this? What's wrong? When am I going to figure out how to do this? I can't stand, hello, you've just piled on yourself, right? So this is the great challenge, is to not, if you don't know that simile of the second arrow, the idea is that, life shoots us with an arrow, that there's some pain that comes in life, physical or mental, emotional. And the second arrow is our reaction to it, our aversion to it, or our judgment to it, or frustration with it. And that if we don't add that second arrow, we are limiting the amount of suffering, which is, pretty good. I mean, we have like the model, like ending all suffering. Okay. Tell me about it when you get there. But in the meantime, that doesn't mean that we have to be completely lost in it, or that it's black and white, like you're either suffering or you're not suffering. It's like, no, you can let go and can be in bad mood without it turning into depression. Hello. So there were some questions about what I was reading, and thank you for putting that in. It is called the Middle Length Discourses, or the Majjhima Nikaya, which is one of the thank you, Monica, for that. So this is sutta number 54. There are 152 suttas in this collection, and this is the most kind of popular collection of Buddhist suttas from the Theravada tradition. It's this collection has the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the mindfulness of breathing suttas, and so it's very rich and also really not easy to read. So I'm not recommending necessarily that you go out and grab this. It's not light reading. It really takes some study to even understand how it's set up, and there's a lot of repetition and things, but there are some ways to approach it. So a little time left, if anybody wants to chime in. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Kevin, what's doing? Hey, I just really enjoyed the way you were talking about meditation in the beginning of this your talk. And it's funny because I was leading a meditation group last night, and I was using the terms allow and release for in breath and out breath. And I don't know whether I heard it from you or something I just picked out of my own brain. I can't remember half the stuff anyway. What was interesting is we had a guy, it was his first, he was 12 days sober. And it was the first time he'd ever come to one of our meetings. He lives up in Lake Tahoe. And he's probably about my age or whatever. And when I told, okay, we're going to do a 20-minute meditation, I'll probably talk through half of it and the rest of it you're on your own. This guy started freaking out because there's no way I can sit still for 20 minutes. Well, for some reason, the meditation I was doing I got other people that they really said they enjoyed it. And I guess this guy kind of got into it. And he couldn't believe that the 20 minutes was already gone. I mean, typically when you said it's the first time he ever meditated in his life.
Wow.
And I was kind of like blown away by the fact that using the right words or the type of rhetoric that you use can be so impactful to somebody that's never done this before. And I think I got a little bit of that from you in your beginning talk. So I just wanted to say, that I've used a lot of your material. And then you said, well, I use a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh's too. So
yeah,
even, so just thanking you for, kind of helping me out with some of this stuff. And it was very insightful last night for this meeting. This is a really good one. So thank you.
That's great. It's really nice to hear it, Bill. Keeping it simple, right? And Thich Nhat Hanh, I think, is the most welcoming meditation teacher around. Like there's something, and he just kind of just doesn't make it into a big technical project or anything. And it's interesting because words, particularly when somebody is in the receptive state of listening to you and trying to relax and meditate, particular words can land in particular ways that kind of move people internally. And it's very interesting how that works. So, that's part of what learning how to offer these teachings and what you find most helpful. I mean, if you listen to someone like Joseph Goldstein, he's got certain phrases. He has the phrase "settle back," and that's obviously like something that just really clicks in his mind. Settle back, and he says it almost every time he leads a meditation, and it's just really interesting. June, hi.
Hi, Kevin. So I'm beginning to notice a pattern myself, and I'm in it right now, where I will have an insight or a couple of insights. For instance, I might listen to a Dharma talk that I've heard many times, except this time I get something in it. I understand something.
Right.
That's the good news. The bad news is that then I start to really want more. It's like I get greedy and I want more, and I feel myself striving. And I guess I'm wondering if you've gotten into those patterns or know other people have, and have you any ideas about any wisdom about how to settle back?
Well, as I say, I think the practice is kind of self-correcting, so it's, seeing that happening is a starting point. And that's, it's that alone is an insight, right? So it's, interesting that the thing that you think of as negative, you can also, if you choose, see it as positive. See that, see what's happening with the mind. There's more grasping. There's a certain irony, right? Because this practice is, every insight is founded somewhat in letting go. And so when there's a desire to let go, you can see that there's like, oh, that's interesting, a little bit of a contradiction in there. So I'll say two things. One is sort of the obvious, which is, watch this, notice how that feels when that's happening, and just keep coming back, but really, the way that we let go of the blazing torch is that we realize it's burning me. And the only way we realize it's burning me is by bringing mindfulness to the experience. So you have to bring mindfulness to the experience of the grasping, and that will tend to naturally self-correct and, inspire you to let go. But the second thing I'd say is, what are you doing to develop more insight? Like the way, if you want more insight, it's not by wanting it that you'll get it. It's by more practice. Sign up for a 10-day retreat, sign up for a month-long retreat. You'll get lots of opportunities to grow. So that it's, in other words, use that as a positive motivation, because it's not a bad motivation. It's a great motivation to want insight, but you have to take the skillful actions to get there. Yeah, thank you. Vicky, it always helps me when I watch you nodding and smiling when I'm giving advice. I'm like, okay, good. I think what I'm saying must be right because Vicky's nodding.
I just love that. I totally love, I love what you said. You know, it's like, yeah, going, you know, going for the Dharma, you know, and without grasping, it doesn't have to have that clinging thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to discourage someone who's like wants to develop more insight. Oh, stop that. No, 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 no. Go for it. That's great. Yeah. Thanks, Vicky. Steve, hi.
Good morning, Kevin.
Morning.
I know we're out of time, but I just wanted to share some insights that I had, and I really, really enjoyed the talk again today. In our recent correspondence, you made some suggestions to me, and I really took them to heart. And I really honed in and focused on, and it can tie into what you're talking about today, is because I skip through so much. I'm one of those kind of people that'll take a 5-day project and try to get it done in one day.
Mhm.
You know, my wife's constantly telling you don't have to do this all today. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But what really hit home for me was the concept of wise effort. The wise effort. I just was reading Bhikkhu Bodhi's Eightfold Path again. I read that over and over and over because I have to do that. My mind somehow doesn't grasp a hold of that. And it just amazed me that I have not really been doing that. And so I think that's the key for me moving forward, is to just really focus on wise effort. And when you were doing the meditation, you got that 20-minute mark. I thought, we got to keep this going because I'm used to sitting for an hour. And I was so just getting into it, and all of a sudden we had to stop. But, you know, the wise effort has really been beneficial. And so thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ongoing question of practice is what is wise effort in any given moment, because there isn't one specific thing that we can point to. It's always requires responding skillfully to the present moment circumstances, the internal, mostly internal, but somewhat external circumstances, what wise effort is. So, yeah. Thank you. Kate?
Yes, hello, Kevin.
Hi.
Hi. Kevin, you and I met in person when you were in Wisconsin last summer to do a 2-day presentation at one of the local tech colleges.
Yeah.
And when we met, you asked me, well, how are you? And I started to talk about my 92 at the time year old mother. And caring for her, moving her to Wisconsin from Texas. And I made the comment about it seems to be the only thing I can talk about lately. And I remember you saying it's a big deal. It's a lot. And she died a week ago, yesterday.
Sorry.
And I spent 1.5 years with her and being primary contact person. And I am experiencing a lack of tears. I understand that I've been grieving the loss of my mother for a long time, being that there was Alzheimer's involved. I am looking for a recommendation on what I could be reading. Is there a sutta that would be appropriate in cases of letting go of the physical attachment to someone? You know, I've got 23 years clean. I'm not going to use over this. I am not experiencing any sort of anxious loss. But I am a little surprised by my lack of tears because I generally am a teary person. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, well, there's no right way to grieve, Kate. You know, it's we're powerless over what arises when when that something happens on that deeper level. And I will tell you just when my father died in 1986, and I was actually 1 year sober at that point. One thing that I found really helpful, I felt like I needed to grieve and to cry, and I found one of Stephen Levine's books called Meetings at the Edge, which just has stories about people who are dying, and I just read that every night for several months to really to kind of keep the grieving alive, because I didn't want to run from it. I mean, there are certain suttas that refer to, but the suttas are all about just let go, basically, which, is, and the suffering of attachment. And it's not necessarily the most helpful, it's not, they don't quite point to where you are with it. So I would look for something like that. And Stephen Levine's work is really helpful because it's Dharma based, and a lot of it is about, he has a book called Who Dies, which is also very powerful. That's more of a kind of exploration of the whole idea of death or in a Dharma context. But Meetings at the Edge is just like very moving, and something like that might be helpful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll look for that.
Okay.
I enjoy. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, folks. Nice to see everyone. Oh yeah, right. Stephen Levine's 1 year to live is helpful too. Yeah. Thank you, Vicky. Yeah. All right. Looks like Monica had to take off, so I don't know if that means the recording ended, but if not, it will end now. So thanks all for coming. I will be back on Friday night, and in the meantime, don't drink or use no matter what, and keep
Or
breathing.
eat sugar.
or well, if that's your yes, don't eat anything that's not helpful to you, or take care of yourselves kindly. All right.
Thank you, Kevin.
Mindfully. Bye-bye.